Greetings, everyone. Your cartoonist pal Stan here with another episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon, the show that I've been doing to celebrate the fact that 2024 was the 50th anniversary of the game Dungeons and Dragons, and also the entire hobby of tabletop role-playing games. And to do that, I've had a whole series of interviews with folks who have worked on D&D, and we've chatted a lot. And while I've been talking to them, I have done drawings. I've done cartoon homages to uh, classic pieces of D&D art. And as of last week, as I noted at the end of the last episode, I had caught up. I'd done one piece for every year since 1974 until this year. Last week, I was working on a piece based on the new Monster Manual, which just came out a couple of weeks ago. Hello, Michael J. Pastor. Thank you for tuning in. Good to see you again, my friend. Um, and so that's why the placard for tonight's episode 57, says "Mission accomplished. I have done what I set out to do." Um, it's not all I'm going to do. So, I mean, that could have been it. I could have been done. But the very first episode, I had a couple of fine gentlemen on, and we were discussing, before the show even got started, we were discussing what the show might be. And I thought that it would be a fine bookend to bring them back on here, having done these 56 previous episodes and 54 drawings, and kind of talk about what we thought before we started and what we've gotten here and what's going to happen going afterwards. Hello, FRM9 and Shadowmane. Shadow. That's hard to say. Shadowmane. So I brought them on to have this kind of bookend conversation and look back at what has happened over the last year. It's the way the show looked back on the entire 50 years. So before I spend too much time babbling on and on about that, I'm going to bring them on screen and introduce them. They are Steve Winter and Jeff Grubb, two folks who've been associated with D&D since very close to its earliest days. You both started in the Hotel Claire days, right?
Yes.
Um,
I was at the very tail end. And Steve was there, I think, a year before I was.
Yeah, about.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
about
I started in
1979 you were there? 78, 79?
no,
No.
I started in March of '81.
Okay, 81, 82. So
And I was there, I believe, let's say November of 81, October of 81. It wasn't that long. It wasn't long before we moved to the new digs.
So in most situations, I would say you are two people who don't need introductions. But why don't you just give a very quick kind of introduction? Steve, you started first, so you get to go first.
Okay. I was at TSR from 1981 until the company shut down or moved in '97. And then I worked with or for Wizards of the Coast off and on until 2011 or thereabouts, and I've been a freelancer ever since. At TSR, I was an editor, and then I was lead editor, managing editor, and eventually became the product manager of AD&D.
And Jeff?
Wow. I joined about a year later, just right before we moved out and into the new digs. I've been primarily a game designer. Was with TSR throughout the 80s and into the 90s, left and went freelance before the buyout by Wizards of the Coast. Was working with Margaret Weiss and freelance during that period, and then rejoined the company after it became part of Wizards of the Coast, stayed with there for several years, and then left again, got caught in a layoff, and worked for a number of other companies like WizKids, and moved over to video games, working on Guild Wars, and most recently Elder Scrolls Online. So we've made that transition from physical gaming to virtual gaming. Written an awful lot of stuff over the years, and much of it is remembered fondly. And Steve has been my editor on a lot of the better material. So
I like how you've shown. I've written a lot of awful stuff. I mean, awful
lot of awful stuff. An awful lot of stuff. Some of it's awful.
I think we can all claim some of our stuff was awful. With pride. So yeah, you guys were kind enough to join me in January of last year when I just came up with this idea of, hey, I ought to do a podcast, and we had a conversation about what this show could be and what maybe would be good things to do, and I drew on that in pulling it together and getting to here. So you have as much blame as I do, I guess, for what turned out.
Spread it around.
What do you remember what we chatted about that first time when I first told you that I thought this was I wanted to do this show? What was your thought about that?
I went back and watched actually the very first show that we had, and when we were talking. I do my homework. And what we were talking about was we were doing is what you wanted to draw, and what we were going to confine it to. We were going to keep it to TSR products and D&D products throughout the entire run, because we talked about a number of other products that came from other early sources, and what qualified as we wanted things that were iconic and things that were memorable and things that were good art as well. And we went through a couple places where like, well, do we have anything for that year? Yeah, we had Eldritch Wizardry. No, we don't want to do Eldritch Wizardry. Okay, fine. We settled on actually Swords and Spells as one of the ones that we were going to do for the future, because I think Steve dug up a copy of it and showed it on the screen. Yeah. So we talked about what our limitations were as far as what we were going to talk about in 50 years. Now it's done. So we have the opportunity to get beyond to expand our horizons.
Yeah. Steve, does that match up? I guess you probably didn't go back and rewatch them like me. You're not the.
Yeah, I decided to rely entirely on my memory. But yeah, I would agree. That's basically what we defined an enormous task for Stan to carry out.
Yes.
And then left Stan to do all the work.
We helped with the early ones. We showed up for the early ones, and then we were gone.
Well, no, I mean, I will say you guys were the guests on the first two episodes. Mm-hmm. First one we were brainstorming. The second one I interviewed you to. And Jeff, you came back and you were a guest again. And both of you volunteered when I had weeks where someone had to drop out or things were happening, that you both volunteered to come on again as needed. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, the joke I made at lunch was we are the Charles Grodin, because whenever a talk show host couldn't get a guest or somebody dropped out, they basically got Charles Grodin. He was available. He was in town. So
Albert Brooks also. Albert Brooks was.
Albert Brooks is good. Tony Randall on the Letterman show. It just.
We can all only aspire to Tony Randall level.
Right.
Exactly.
I feel like Was it Randolph Scott on the in the in Blazing Saddles?
Blazing Saddles.
But
We
Yeah.
can
Randolph
do it
Scott,
for
all the
Randolph
Everyone
cowboys
takes
Scott.
stop
off
and take
their
their
hat
hat
and
off.
holds it over
Randolph Scott,
their
Tony Randall. Uh, um. So, uh,
Joan Rivers. We got a note
yeah,
from
Joan
note from the
Rivers.
floor. Joan Rivers. She got a whole week or two sometimes.
Well, Joan Rivers was the
She would go
guest
on.
host for
Yeah,
Johnny for a long time.
Mhm.
he'd go on vacation, and she'd take over.
Maybe I should just turn this into a show about old talk shows. That would be pretty
Yeah,
fun.
exactly. We can do this.
Right. Every week
Uh,
you could do a sketch of one of Johnny Carson's big time guests.
right.
Right.
I'm sure I've got a turban over here somewhere. We could.
We got a 3x5 card. It's just
Yeah. Who
Um,
will next week's guest be?
reply hazy. Check email later. Um, did you? So okay, you guys were involved in that. You were helping me brainstorm it, but it was all. I mean, it was something. And you said this to me. And I don't know. You're gonna have to keep doing this. Did you uh, have any doubts about how well this might come together? Whether I don't know. Were there any challenges you thought might lay ahead that may or may not have cropped up?
yeah, and you did hit them admirably, which was, there were years where, given our scope, there wasn't a lot to pick
Oh my
from.
god!
When TSR was, basically before the buyout, it was challenging
Mhm.
there, and even after, with the release of third edition, where the iconic books did not have art. They had a created three-dimensional thing on the cover. They were trying to look like old medieval
Yeah,
tomes. So and that didn't sort of hit the marks that we were after either. They were really good, but they just
yeah.
didn't fall into the
Mhm.
category. So I remember there were lunches, and I should explain to the audience at home that Wednesday, Stan and Steve, and often I, and usually, and sometimes a guest star, Steve's son's Alex joined us today, meet down at a barbecue joint in Renton. And Stan's been doing this forever, and
Yeah,
we've dropped in and dropped out over the years. And so we basically are those three old guys in the table in the middle, and they always show up there, and they always have they're always talking, they always order. So uh, at one point they put up a little sign that said "reserved for Stan" on it. So that was missing this week. I think they said, okay, that was fun.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that's like the production meeting for this show. You having lunch with you
Yeah,
guys, and you'll start asking me, "What do you have coming up?" And we
Yeah.
what's
talk
next?
through it.
Yeah, and there were places where you had the next three set up, and then after that, you hadn't heard from people. Things haven't gone back. You don't know where you're going to go after that as well.
Yeah. Michael J. Pastor, you wondered who attended those lunches. I talk about the fact that I have a regular barbecue lunch. That
Yeah.
that lunch, the history of this lunch goes back to right after we came out to Renton
Hmm.
uh, from Wisconsin. It started as the comics lunch because Wednesday is the day that new comics are released, and there used to be a comic store right down the street from the
Right.
barbecue joint,
The
and
Comics Den, was it called?
it's a comics den, and uh, it was a comics den before they had a fire that closed their first building, and that
Right.
was a comic something else.
And in their
Uh,
defense, they did not start that fire. The fire
no,
was started upstairs in an apartment.
The
um, but
store was
But they
doing
had
fine.
the star was, and there was no real reason.
uh, yeah. So the Wednesday lunch goes back to 1997,
Hmm.
uh, and it moved around a bunch of places, and eventually the place where we're at now, at that point, was an Indian restaurant, an Indian restaurant and local pizza delivery.
Okay.
And it's a very weird combination. And
Indian pizza has become a thing out here. We've got like these curry pizza places.
yeah.
So
And we tried a bunch of places. There's a Wendy's, the Wendy's over in Renton near the Safeway
oh yeah.
on Rainier. That was our
Mhm.
regular stop for a while, and we bounced around a few places. And when the Indian shop switched over and became barbecue, we switched there, which was right
Mhm.
around 2000, 2001. And
And it was walking distance, so that
yeah,
made sense.
and it was right walking distance to the comic shop. So,
Mhm.
so
And I only really became a regular after when COVID hit and we all started working from home. So
so yeah, no, but the comics lunch has gone on, yeah, 20, going on 30 years, and we've been at that restaurant every Wednesday since about 2003.
mhm.
Yeah, yeah. I think I only really started because I was not that much into comic books. I only started coming to the lunch regularly, like when I got laid off from Wizards.
Well, I mean, it shifted from being comics lunch uh, when the layoff started, and then it started being you could count on people being there,
Mhm.
uh, and it became just the Wednesday lunch. Uh,
Yeah. And we've had numerous guests over the,
yes, there's a lot of people showing.
Julia's been there.
Yeah,
Mike Burles just happened to show up one
yeah,
day, and
Yep, Andy
he's
Collins
had
comes
chatted.
in.
Ali
yeah.
Collins is
Andy's there fairly
semi-regular.
regularly.
Rob Hainso
Um,
comes uh,
Yep.
fairly regular. Pete Schaefer's
Pete
Jefferson
Pete
Dunlap has
Schaefer,
dropped in a
who
few times.
designed Jefferson. Pete
Yep,
Schaefer, who designed the well.
yep.
He's been there a
Mhm.
couple times. So it's sort of like, yeah, it's our late night television moment. So the regular we have Johnny, we have the band leader, we have the sidekick. We're all fine.
See, Chris Andrew says excited. He's excited to hear if we have. Oh, he's looking for just. He wants some Dragonlance stories.
Dragonlance
Maybe
stories.
early
Oh gosh,
Dragonlance.
Dragonlance's early nickname was Dragon Lunch because Tracy would go to lunch and we would
Was
talk about this Dragon Lunch.
it
Hmm.
all comes together?
Yeah, I mean, lunch is an important meeting time for creatives. So
Yeah. Well,
get
particularly
it
at
fed and we're fine.
TSR. I mean, there were a lot of department lunches that, we had the fine fellow lunch
Yes.
every was that Friday or Monday? I forget what day of the
I
week
was
we
gonna
did
say it's
that.
like Thursday or something. Yeah, but
Yeah,
it was, and there was a
one of those
limited
weekdays.
scope of what was available. We had like a
Mhm.
McDonald's and a Hardee's, and a lot of people would just go over and get something at the local grocery store and microwave it.
Yeah,
It was
but the
it
the
was
big local uh, videotape outlet and pizza place
yes.
Pizza goes
was
with
the big
everything.
local.
And there was, and this has been mentioned in official texts, the next door pub,
Yeah,
Yep.
where you'd go and basically that'd be a place for a late afternoon meeting. The boss says, I'm taking you
Mhm.
out for beer,
I
and we
went.
would
I
I
go
went
remember
over there
going
there.
to
and
the next door a lot more for dinner than for lunch. That
yeah.
somehow seems more
Mhm.
of a different place.
I was back in
It
Lake
was
Geneva
fancier.
the a couple of days after Gamehole Con last year, and had lunch at the next door pub.
Hmm.
Still
Was it
there.
everything
Still,
you remembered?
it was so much more.
It was so much the next door pub. Remember when Mike Cook would take us there, and
Yes. Yeah. Mike would come
Mike,
in and
Mike,
buy
Mike,
pitchers
Mike was a
to line
big
up the
guy. Yeah,
bars.
he'd come over to the table with two full pitchers of beer, and in his hands they looked like mugs. He was
Yeah.
just, and he would be buying. So
Chris Pramas. Hey, Chris
Hey,
Pramas. Chris
Chris.
Pramas says it's
Yeah.
been ages since he came to Wednesday lunch. Yeah, Chris and Nicole would occasionally show up. I know because the Green Ronin, I don't know if they still do, but they had, I think, their main company P.O. box at the Renton post office. So it was a convenient time for them
Downtown.
to swing by on a Wednesday and say hi. Um, I'll tell you, as a little advance, I've been talking with Chris that about being a guest on the show as it stretches forward to beyond its original mission. But we can talk about that fully later. Um,
Are we at a segue point, or do you want to
we're always
talk
at
about
segue points.
D and
Well,
D
I was going to
product you'd
segue
like to
back to
get
something you had
published?
said, Jeff, about
Hmm.
the ages of the art and that the points of time that were difficult or more
Hmm.
challenging to pick. Because uh, I don't you just rewatched that first episode. In my head, what I finally settled on was that I wanted a something that felt like a either felt like it definitely everyone remembered this product or this felt like a D&D. You looked at it and you just thought D&D. uh, or if it wasn't that, I tried very much to make all the pictures uh, focus on the um, the D&D party, that it felt like a scene from within the D&D game.
Right,
And
Mhm.
we did discuss that.
there are periods of time where that was not the what the art direction for the products was. They just weren't doing covers like that. Like
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of fourth edition was very much heroic pose. You know,
Mhm.
there was a lot of late
they were really
second
good.
edition. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
and I try whenever I discuss that and say the art. There's no slag on the art. It was really
Hmm.
good, but the direction, the creative direction that the art directors brought to it were to try and achieve something else. There was
Yeah.
a
And they were
uh,
and
I
they
mean,
were
I
setting
really
themselves
love those.
apart from previous editions. So yeah.
mm,
Yeah.
Hmm?
I love those fourth edition covers. I think those were some of the best
Yeah.
covers the game ever had.
Mhm.
yeah, no, there are there's a lot of really good art, a lot of really good covers that I looked at, and I'm like, this just doesn't meet the the vision for uh, uh, what I wanted. I had a really hard time finding Forgotten Realms products that had that, because
Hmm.
there were a couple of periods also where the covers tended very much towards like movie posters, which is two or three people standing here and a floating head in the background and a floating uh, uh, piece of scenery in this background, and it just
Hmm.
didn't have that actiony feeling to it.
Hmm.
And a lot of that
Yeah.
on FR
We've had that all along. The cover of Azure Bonds is very much in that pose with another figure behind it, a tower behind it, and that became a standard for the Finder's Stone trilogy as well, as opposed to an action shot.
Michael J. Pastor points out that I have on at least one or two gone to interior pieces for
Right.
drawing them, but
Hmm.
I which there I was showing you guys beforehand that the very first things I did in the cycle that led up to this idea were uh, interior pieces from the old original hardcovers, doing my interpretations of those. Um, but for the stuff here, when I did pick interior ones, I wanted to make sure that they also had that classic. People would recognize that. And there's a
Hmm.
difference, or I think there's. I wanted art that was not just this is a good fantasy drawing, but you look at it and you go, yeah, that's a D&D drawing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Did you do a Paladin in Hell? I
Yes,
vaguely recall
yes,
that. That's what I
Hmm.
thought.
That was an interior.
that was that because I had done um, the cover of the player's handbook previously. I'd done a cartoon homage to it twice,
Mhm.
and so I decided not to do it again.
What did
It
you
was
do for
a
the Year of the Monster Manual?
The
Trying to
Year of the
remember that
Monster
one.
Manual, I did the cover of the first box set. The
Oh,
class
that's right. Okay.
the Sutherland painting.
yeah. And I did that because that painting means so much to me. You know, it's like there's no way when I started, it's like I am doing that one.
And that was one of the challenges I think we brought up early on is that, us old guys, we remember all the old classic covers, the first
Right.
edition, the little brown box, etc. But as we move through, we're losing, the um, that coherence of everybody, knowing what they're looking
Yeah.
at. The more recent material has been more of a, oh, what was that from? That looks good, because I'm not recognizing it immediately as
Yeah.
being for a particular project. I didn't work on it. I didn't play it. So, it just didn't connect me as much. Someone's phone's going off.
Whew, that was fun.
Nice ringtone.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It wasn't my phone, but it reminds me to silence my phone anyway. Not
Mine
that
Mine
anyone
vibrates.
ever
reminded
calls
too.
me.
So if I just react suddenly, that's because
I
it's,
have a
something old.
feeling I know what that is, and there's nothing I can do about it.
Okay. If you
So
step
yeah.
away, Steve and I can vamp.
Well, yeah, and I may, but
Yeah. Excuse me, I have to take this.
I have to take
no.
this.
In
Yeah,
fact, I can
yeah.
tell you what that is.
Moshi moshi.
I get that's someone that's I'm supposed to get a package delivery, and that's whoever the package person is trying to tell me they can't get in the gate to my community, and I can't do anything about that. And
You
I've
can't
given
buzz them in.
I sent directions to them what they should
You
do,
can
and if they don't read it, that's not my fault.
drop it on the office. Yeah,
Yeah.
because you can get to the
Anyway,
office.
so I was
Anyway,
since you had brought it up, um, I'm gonna switch over here, and we can
memory
go
lane.
through. I maybe go quickly through what we've done. Like this was the very first one that I did. The 1974.
Oh, the other one we were talking about was one of were you going to do the dwarvish elf?
Yeah.
From
Oh
the
God!
first
Yeah.
yeah.
There we go again.
It's labeled elf and it looks like a gnome or something, but like I said, you should just do the whole Men in Magic book, and just redraw that.
Yeah. All the little Millie the model tracings and all that.
Exactly. Hmm.
Yeah, you were talking when I was doing this one. You were talking about the fact that this is a lift from a Doctor Strange.
Yes, it was, and I didn't know that until years later, and I've had all sorts of people who have researched it and say, yeah, that's where it came from, because it was fanzine stuff.
Yeah.
It was amateur.
Who
You know,
who knew?
hey
Who
kids, we're
knew?
putting on a show. Yeah, no one's gonna pay attention to this.
Right. I mean, this was
Right.
the
No one's
kind
gonna
of
be able to
thing.
track it down.
This was the kind of thing that was going to get sold to 4 dozen people at the
At convention.
game days in colleges around the Midwest, and that was it.
Right.
And then the second one was an interior piece.
Right. But that interior piece was also the TSR logo for a while.
Oh, yeah.
So that had a lot of
I mean, I
history
think
to it.
it became the logo after it was
Yes.
done as an interior piece because everybody liked it so much.
And this was the one that Steve showed us on that first. I didn't even
Right,
know
Swords
this
and
existed.
It wasn't me. I think it was John Ratliff who had the copy of that.
I think you're right.
But I think
we also
I
get together
don't have a
Saturdays
copy
to
of
play
it anymore.
games.
I
So
used to, but I don't anymore.
yeah, I think I got one downstairs.
And then
That was
this
great.
was
There's
in
the
years the
classic.
monster manual.
Mhm.
I'm so glad.
I always kind of wondered if, did Dave just run out of time, and that's why the wings are gray, or was that what he intended?
Maybe he just ran out of red paint.
Yeah.
Sadly, we can't ask him anymore.
No,
um, yeah. So and then I went for the
there's
paladin
Paladin
helmet, but
Hell.
Yeah.
um, which while that's also a tip to the Paladin and Hell adventure that we wound up printing in 99,
Right.
98.
Yep,
Uh, I
yep,
zoomed in the same way they did for the cover of that because the picture itself has a whole lot more going on.
yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I did know. I've noticed in your artwork, and I think that's a strength. Is basically you pull out the important parts, and basically you can fade a lot of the background detail.
Yeah,
I
Yeah.
think who's the author on Paladin and Hell? Was
the
that
Monty.
Chris
the
Monty?
book.
Pretty
Yeah,
sure
Okay,
Monty
Monty
wrote
wrote
that.
the
Yeah.
adventure.
okay.
Yeah. I don't remember in the original black and white drawing, were there tentacles coming up from
Yeah,
below, or was that something that was added for the later?
no, they were there.
Okay.
They were kind of. I don't I don't know if they'd reached that far up to his foot. They were down. They were on the lower left of the
Say,
drawing.
I thought I might have had my old PHB sitting on the bookshelf here, but it's across the room, so I can't go look.
So
Yeah,
therefore,
I
we're
mean,
lost.
I,
But
you
that's an important thing. I think a lot of the art we've had has a lot of detail to it, and sometimes that detail really tends to get lost. So
um,
in reproduction.
Well, especially the stuff that Sutherland did. I mean, he just packed
Hmm.
details into those drawings.
um, the one of the other things I specifically chose the square format because it forced
Hmm.
me to make some of those decisions um, and do interpretation. Like, there certainly is always a concern when you're doing someone else's art about copyright and uh, ownership. And uh,
Hmm.
one of the things that marks a something which you can do and not worry about that is transformation. And so it has to be transformative. You just can't reproduce the same thing that was done in the original. So doing cartooning is probably enough to
Hmm.
get by that. It's the same thing reason why caricatures uh, are of you can cite the photograph they come from, but if it's a caricature, it's transformative. Um, by
Mhm.
changing the shape of the piece, I had to pick and make changes, and I don't know how far it would get me legally, but it made me feel better in my heart. Let's see. Then it's the DMG,
DMG. Hmm.
where I took the front and back covers and put them together.
Mhm.
And the Gygax coat of arms. S4 barrier piece.
This one was Errol originally, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And there's another one that I
Fiend Folio.
in my head
Oh
said,
yeah,
"Got to do that one."
that
Which I
was
always
yeah. I
thought
mean,
Fiend
that
Folio
was such
had
a great
really good art.
piece of art when
Yeah.
it came out. I mean, it's very different from. Well, I shouldn't say very different. It was the style was
It was
almost.
different.
I mean, it was kind of similar to the stuff that Rosloff had done previously with that
Yeah.
less realistic approach. But yeah, great piece of great piece of art
Yeah,
from.
I always consider the style of art with it was here and in the interiors to be, like a different flavor. It was the
Right.
British D&D. So
Mhm.
and it basically had a very different set of lines, set of tools.
And again, I took the back cover details and threw them on the front.
At the front.
Um,
And
Mhm.
that's when we got around doing TSR direct product. That's from the comic book ads.
from the comic book.
Mhm.
I
And that
made
dragon, the
destroy.
expression on that dragon's face is so spot on.
So Steve Sullivan was a guest, uh,
Hmm.
and he I think he was a guest the day I worked on this. But he
Mhm.
was talking to Bill Willingham he told me afterwards after we'd done it, and he showed him what I did, and Willingham was like, man, yeah, he did it better than I did.
Oh my.
Yeah, no, he apparently was like that. That's exactly what it should have been. I'm like, yeah, but he, he I've been doing art 20 years longer than Willingham had at that point in his career, and it's inspired by him. So
Yes.
I take no great credit other than that I'm showing my love for the work that he did.
Mhm.
And
That was one of those things where the other covers weren't really as iconic as that particular piece because it was an
David
old comic
David Shepard says British D&D drives on the left
drives
side of
on
the
the
road.
left. Mhm. Strangers, this is my home.
Yeah, I you know what I'm not going to bother taking it out, but I made stickers with that.
Oh yeah, I thought those were great.
I gave
The
those as part of the calendar giveaway.
Tracy
Calendar.
campaigned for that ad. In other words, Clyde had finished it early enough, and I think Trace wrote the copy for that went
Mm,
with it and got it into Dragon magazine. He campaigned to get an advertisement for Ravenloft because we hadn't done as many adventures getting a
right.
full color ad in Dragon,
You
but he pitched in and made that happen.
know, it's funny in that painting. I mean, in your rendition of it and in the original, I, for some reason, I always think of those gargoyles. I never think of them as stone. They, to me,
Yeah.
they're like Strahd's pets. That he's not alone on that balcony when I see that painting.
Then
Dragonlance, the
came over to
books.
a book
Yeah.
cover.
Hmm.
And this is a pretty posy drawing. Right? It's
Mhm.
Yes.
classic, right? I have no qualms about using this one, but it is just three characters standing around with a monster in the background.
And the
Yep.
next one was three other
And it,
characters. The
Yeah,
third one was three more characters.
yeah,
So I think
yep.
it matches your. This is an
right,
adventuring
right.
party.
And it's obviously the mustache, but Sturm always reminds me of the Harry Shearer character in Spinal Tap.
Oh, really? Okay.
You didn't know that Stern played the drums, but now that's headcanon for me.
Yeah.
Bass,
Bass. They keep losing drummers.
Yeah,
right?
Unearthed Arcana. I love the cover you did. There's just the amount of details that were in that, and you managed to
it's
bring so much of it
Mhm.
forward.
I learned so much about the covers doing it, and this is one. There was a ton more detail. Like this is nothing
Oh
compared
yeah.
to what Easily put in on the original.
Hmm.
Yeah, you got the little creature up there in the
In the bowl.
decanter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yes, troublesome.
Queen of the Demon Red Pits.
We had a fun conversation about this one.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
you and you, I don't think it was on here. I think this was at lunch. We had a
Yeah.
conversation about this with whoever I was interviewing that week about
Hmm.
the how everyone who was involved at the time did not, and many still don't. I think Jeff, you were saying that just don't see what's problematic about this
Yep.
because that's Drow. Clearly, they're Drow, but
Drow,
Mhm.
how we created them at the
Yeah.
time, and they were much that's good. What I liked about this particular piece was they pulled together the G's, the D's, and the Q
yeah,
together into one shot, and
Yeah.
basically for the product that it was a compilation of all of those classic modules.
yeah, um,
Yeah. And I had actually commented somewhere during an online discussion of this picture that
Hmm.
because the digital version of that illustration that floats around the web is very much altered from the original printing. It's a lot lighter so that to bring out a lot of the background details.
Mm.
But that
Yeah,
changes the tones of everything, right? And
right.
I don't have the original around anymore, but my recollection of it is that like the the flesh tones of the drow were much more charcoal like the fire giants than the way they
You
appear.
are, you are.
No,
Yeah, I
am I
think
Well,
you're
wrong about
correct.
that, Stan?
I did this based on, and I guess I could. Uh, no, I can't. Um, I had a photo of the original uh, cover, and
Mhm.
Hmm.
I searched for several of them to pull it up to use for my reference, and they
However, regardless, there is no defense for the disco hair.
it really did have
Come
disco.
on. There's, it's obviously beyond Thunderdome, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't need another hero.
So the next week, when I did the
FR1,
same
Waterdeep.
thing, I did
Mhm.
change the skin tone because the drow in this picture also looked just like the ones in the previous one.
Mhm. It was
Mhm.
another Keith Parkinson.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
our drow
Who?
did shift in skin tones
yeah.
over time. They tried a number
Yeah,
of different things.
yeah. And I mean, of all of our later crop of artists, right? All the guys who are really became famous for doing the color covers. Keith was
Mhm.
usually my favorite. I just thought he had such an eye for his color was,
Yeah.
so vibrant in those
Mhm.
paintings.
And then we have
Xanathar.
another one of the ones that this was such a classic piece that when I started to draw it, I started looking at it like I had no idea what was going on this.
There's
Well,
a
and
monster
part
on
of it
that fire.
exactly there was the reproduction was such that basically it didn't. It's an example that certain parts of the image sort of diminish,
Yeah.
as
Hmm.
opposed to the original art.
Yeah. I
What?
thought it had been a castle on top of that hill.
Yeah. I don't remember what this was supposed to be portraying. Where is that?
I
World of
don't.
Greyhawk.
Well,
All right, it's just
yeah,
Where in the
a,
world
a,
of Greyhawk?
a spot in Greyhawk. Yeah,
The
I don't
Sea of
recall if
Dust.
it was supposed to
It's
portray a historic incident or what.
that I can't say.
I have no idea.
It had a hawk to the side. It was gray.
Yeah, and yeah, there's the other, that giant eagle or whatever it is. Uh, I don't know. I hadn't noticed it before. I knew there was a thing. I just thought it was a glowing ball. I,
And then you're
I
like,
didn't
oh
do a
crap! Now I got to draw an eagle too.
yeah, I didn't do a great job of capturing it here, but the land is flowing lava. It's just a big plain of lava.
Hmm.
It's a lot more going on this than I had known.
I'm sure that somewhere out there there's a Greyhawk fanatic who can tell us exactly what that picture portrays and when it
Right,
happens and
right now they're
who the guy on the who the guy flying on the griffin is and everything.
No, we often had the case where the art piece did not exactly match up with the contents.
oh
The
yeah,
cover of the original Forgotten
Oh
Realms
yeah.
box set, the writer there is just really beautiful. It's a Keith Parkinson piece. It looks really great. It's fantastic. No idea when it was done who he was. So I think we
that
retconned
I
him
don't
in
think it's
later.
White Plume Mountain.
Yeah,
Dave Shepard. Yeah.
Spelljammer confirmed.
Hmm.
And that's another one in the production. The man of war, the elven ship, sort of fades
It's
behind the
so faded
character.
back. Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
dark against a dark background, so you don't, and you got the logo over part of it, so you don't notice it nearly as much.
Yeah. Was this an easily
this is
originally?
This
yeah.
was an easily yes.
Yeah.
This was a year.
I like
This
how
year
the
that they were just so hard to find anything that was not posy posy.
mhm.
That I
What year was this?
This is Legends and Lore is 80
86.
87.
Okay.
I've got them pulled up here. I think I can close it out and it'll tell me.
Yeah.
1990.
Okay.
But yeah, there were some times when I would bring it to you guys at lunch and say I'm looking ahead and I just don't know. These are the things. There are a couple of websites out there that list everything that was published in a year, and
Mhm.
I
And
would
with
pull them up
one
and
of
look
them
at
you were
them.
using, and you got to the end of where their list was, and then panic set in because we couldn't identify what was the
I
next year.
I found a couple of resources. One which did list every year, and one
Hmm.
which had all the art for everything, but it wasn't sorted by year. So I use those
Mm.
in combination from then on. But yeah, I mean, this was a year when there were, I don't know, 60 products that came out, and I flipped through all of them, and they were all in that strike a pose, uh, or,
It was a
or
thing.
had some other reason they were just a monster, or something about them that just made it. So I was like, no, no, I don't want to draw that.
David, the planet from the Spelljammer cover was the planet Easily. He
The
made that
planet
up.
easily.
So, the planet Easily.
Let's see. Then we got the
Yeah,
Dark Sun.
Yep.
Michael J. Pastor talks about the splat books, which actually the
Yeah,
complete books,
Hmm.
the brown ones for players, the blue ones for DMs, and then those
the
green
green
ones.
ones.
And Steve, you did a lot of those on Rome
Well, yeah. I mean,
and
that was
the
my product
Reformation.
line.
Yeah,
So, but yeah, we saved a lot of money on cover art on those books.
and then spent it on the material that and then gold
That's right.
embossing
That's
it.
right. It all went in. Yeah, it was all the money went inside, man.
Mhm.
That's how you could
I'm
put the
talking about
gold
the
leaf on
cover.
the cover.
Yeah, the gold leaf.
Yeah.
Dark Sun.
This is another one that this was Brahms' photo of Brahms' painting of this is a long. These were two different covers that I slammed
Yep,
Yep.
together for this drawing.
that feels right.
Hmm.
Ravenloft.
Ravenloft. Ravenloft was a series of everything was a one character in the drawing, and it
So,
was
did you
very
copy
horror.
exactly the scroll, or did you just use that as inspiration
I just
for all
used
the
it as
markings?
inspiration.
Okay, Moss Easley.
So if we read that scroll, nothing bad
Hmm.
will happen.
You're fine. You'll be fine.
Yeah, but
If
she
you
was
read that
reading.
scroll, consult a psychiatrist. Michael J. Passor suggested maybe it's not just Planet Easy; it's most easily.
A wretched hive of scum and villainy. We must be careful. Oh, okay. This one was.
That's a
It's a
book of artifacts.
book of artifacts. Okay, is that?
Yep.
Hmm.
And that was Stephanie. What was her name? She was the art director. The
Hmm.
models for this were Stephanie and Fred Fields, weren't they?
Were they?
Oh yeah, you know
Yeah,
what?
I
I
looking
only
back, I think
knew
I
Fred when
never
he
heard
had a
Fred.
beard. I look. That's definitely Fred Fields. And here again, one of the few FR products that felt.
Yeah.
It also is three characters standing around, but because
Hmm.
it's the puzzle, it feels uh, it feels like a scene from a middle of an adventure.
And an odd cover in that you've got three characters kind of standing there going, well, what do we do?
and yet so much like a D&D game.
Yep.
You have 3 doors. One has tentacles above it, one has a dragon, one has a Medusa's head. Which door do you choose? The exit.
I walk towards the camera and get the hell out of there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the artist is sketching us. We'll ask him. The star.
So, Galantry?
Yeah.
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 And I really liked what you did with the water on this one.
That was a real tricky one because what Janelle did with it, I could not reproduce. I just boggled looking at that. So thank you. I'm glad. I like my solution, but it's definitely not what Janelle did.
She did wonderful things for the star line. So.
I was trying to
get
Hellbound. I wrote that comic
for most of the worlds, and Planescape was a pain in the butt because there's so many of the covers that didn't even. They were just pictures of a setting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And this is about the time when I sort of faded as far as, knowing what everything was. This was, what, Giant something?
This is King of the Giant Downs.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. So, this would have been the year after you left because Ed Stark did the design on it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Cool cover, but yeah, I didn't remember what the product was either.
And so, and this is the era where I'm getting a few of those. Like, I think the covers were really good. And there were so many. This is an era when there started to be a lot of choices for each year over the next.
Oh, sure.
These the shift came back to a lot of different covers of characters and adventurers doing things.
Yeah. And who was this? Tony Sudlow or Fred Fields?
Yeah, it's Tony Sudlow.
Okay. Remember, we had a company trivia contest shortly after Tony Sudlow joined the company, and I was on the little committee that came up with the trivia questions, and one of them was, "How do you spell Tony Sudlow's name?"
The first Christmas I was there was a similar thing, and one of the questions was, "How do you spell Slavosek?" Bill was not amused at how few people got it right.
Yeah, nobody knew how to spell Tony's name either.
At his wedding, his minister, the officiating minister, mispronounced the name. So.
It's another one that I love this cover, and no one remembers this cover because it was not for it was for an adventure. It was for a 32-page adventure or a 48.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't it like an RPGA adventure or something?
No, it was the first in the.
No?
Remember when we were doing the Lithiad? For a few years there was a book about a monster and a three adventure arc. This was the first adventure in the Lithiad series.
Okay. Geez, you'd think I would know then. I think that was my product line.
I believe it was. But I remember the painting. I just couldn't tell you the title of the product it was on. A Darkness Gathering. Written by Bruce.
Oh, that's right, because they were all about extinguishing the sun. Yep. Yeah. That was definitely.
And the art piece goes so much well with the title. So
Yep. Yeah. I think that was another one of that series. Like Miranda came up with, because two of the titles in that series were some of the best titles we ever did. There was the Ilithiad, and there was I, Tyrant. for the beholders.
Yeah.
And I think Miranda came up with both of those titles, and they were just
She's
fantastic.
good with that.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Sneak another Brahm in there while I can.
yeah.
This is the
But,
hardcover
Council
version
of
of
Council,
Worms.
Council of Worms. Yep.
Council of
The
Worms.
Council of Worms redo. Yeah.
Yeah. This is
Not the original one.
this is one of those books that came out in the last year, as third edition was being put together, and they were trying to find
Mm-hmm.
things to get in the schedule. Like,
Mhm.
got to get stuff produced. We don't have time or manpower for it. Everyone's working on third edition. But
Yep,
you know what,
he's up there.
I didn't
Look at me! I have the medallion.
this and this is the reason that I didn't choose the other Council of Worms cover, which I had been on my short list for the year it came out for the thing to
Right, that was an
draw,
easily.
but I knew I wanted to do this one.
Was this another Jaquays?
No, that's Brahm.
No, it was a
Oh,
Brahm.
okay. All right.
His dragons were more slender.
Oh yeah, Janelle did Dragon Mountain. She didn't do the
Right.
Council.
Yes. I love this piece.
Starter set.
Yeah, the third edition starter set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that the first appearance of the iconic characters?
Yeah.
Regdar
Regdar up front
rarely.
going, "You're not going to like
Marduk.
me, but I'm not going away."
You're right.
And
That's
how come
Regdar, not Tordek.
I just kind of wondered, are they fleeing from the dragon? Why is the dragon behind them?
Yeah.
Actually, it's a mirror behind them, and basically they're seeing the dragon reflected.
No, it's Miley is casting an illusion of the dragon to scare whatever they're going. It's not a literal cover.
It's a metaphor.
Yeah.
Ooh.
More iconic characters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this was the one where Jeff was talking about. I think almost everything else done that year was in that faux tome.
Faux book look. Yeah.
There's so little in these early third edition years. There's so few covers that had full illustrations like this.
Yeah. Then was this an adventure, or was this one of the novels?
No, this was an adventure.
This was an adventure.
The
Okay.
third of the adventure.
Venture Path?
Speaker in Dreams was a third in the adventure.
There we go.
Path. It was
Okay.
Trying to remember it was what was the first one? I can't remember the title of it now. Anyway, this was the third one.
Yeah. First one was Bruce Cordell's, right?
Yes, and then Rich Baker's Dwarven Forge, or not Dwarven Forge, something Forge.
My God, I can see the cover now, and I can't give you the title. Oh well.
Anyway, not turning this into old men can't remember the word.
Tongues.
That's right. This is a new show. Old men can't remember the noun.
you know the thing with the guy.
Yeah.
You know.
Right. There was stuff happening.
Yeah, and there was stuff in the background, and just. Iconics. Woof.
Is this one of the Ayus?
No, this was an FR book.
This is Forgotten Realm.
Unapproachable East.
We dealt with a lot of the southeast area, Durpar and everything. They did a lot of undead. And that. Pittsburgher. Speaker of Dreams.
Speaker in Dreams
Yes.
was the one with the
The one
giant,
with the purplish worm.
not really a purple worm.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris.
And yeah,
Sunless Citadel.
yep.
Sunless
Sunless
Ah,
Citadel.
you can count on
Yep.
Primus.
old guys. See, we need someone off stage with Google, you know. Just...
And then Forge of Fury. Oh yeah. This was for the beginner basic box set.
Okay.
Michael J. Pastor. Yeah, Michael J. Pastor's also a Pittsburgh guy, Jeff. You'll like him.
So I understand. As soon as you say an at, you know, we're Yinzers, as in Yins going downtown.
Here's another
Okay,
one.
this one I don't remember at all.
Yeah, well, the cover only had that guy on the far right. The most of the rest of that is from the back cover.
Okay.
It's from an FR hardcover adventure called The Sons of Grumsh.
Right. And the production had such that you had the big thick Forgotten Realms banner across the top. There's a round,
all the
Forgotten
Realms.
artwork
Yeah, it was
back
graphic treatment,
Right.
graphic treatment, and a short, wide painting.
Right.
Give a little more space for storytelling.
This one, there's a whole other group of people.
Right, there's a whole bunch of undead. Cover. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that one being a much larger painting, but
yeah,
the Sons of Grumsh thing, I don't recall ever even seeing that. I wasn't at the company at that time, and I don't remember.
Yeah, so we didn't get free copies.
Yeah,
I've got a whole collection of them down here, but I'm not going to dig it out. Woof. Is that another one?
This is another box set. This was a follow-up. They decided to do a follow-up to the basic box set. This was it had a soft cover version of the Player's Handbook in it. The only soft cover Player's Handbook I think TSR or Wizards ever printed. And a couple of minis and other things. It was basically to take you from the basic set into playing the full game.
Yeah. Yeah, we had this one. I had a copy of that. I think I should say my son Alexander had a copy of this, which is why I remember.
But I love this painting, and it's another one that a lot of people don't know, because why would you have that box set unless you had a kid? I think it was also made specifically for the big box stores. So it didn't show up in a lot of game stores. So a lot of people never even saw it. This is from an adventure that I didn't know existed until I went back in 2011 on contract, and it was on a free table. And I said, what a great cover. What is that thing?
What is that thing?
It's an adventure, a 4E adventure. The
4E
something Spire, I think. Yeah.
Sunless Spire? No, Sunless Citadel.
No,
because they weren't using. I mean, isn't that Regdar turned to stone?
It is Regdar. Well, maybe it must be 3.5.
It's got to be third then, because they weren't
3.5.
using the iconics anymore.
It's a 3.5 adventure.
Yeah, great Medusa.
Yeah, well, and the background is just fantastic as well.
The background's insane.
Yeah, who was the original artist?
That is also a Wayne Reynolds, I believe.
Okay. Sinister Spire.
Sinister Spire. Thank you, Matt.
Comes the note from the floor.
Yeah, I think I actually have a copy of that on my shelf right over there.
But you'll have to turn around to get to it. So
yeah.
Um, this is from the character sheets, the character record sheets.
Wow.
Definitely into the days of big action on the covers at
Yeah, well,
this
these are
point.
Yeah,
so
which was
many
the
Wayne
type of thing that
Reynolds in
Stan
this
was
era.
looking
Yeah.
at. Yeah.
Yes, the Wayne Reynolds redo of the great old tramp drawing.
Yeah,
Okay.
and then we get
And a
to fourth
tiefling.
edition.
Right.
You know what? It's not my favorite version of
Hmm.
this owl bear overall, but I
Bear.
really love this drawing, of this painting.
It's a bugbear in Friends.
Sounds like a Saturday morning cartoon show.
Yeah.
It was our description of the old Greyhawk picture of the pumpkin-headed bugbear.
Yeah. It's like a bear, but it's got a big
Yeah.
head like a
Big
pumpkin.
head. Yeah.
Well, look at the original bugbear or the original owl bear, and it really looks more like an eagle bear.
Yes.
Mhm.
And not, not as animated as we see, later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was one of the ones that came from the plastic toys. The
Yes.
Rust
Yeah.
Monster, the Bugbear, the Periton, and I think there was one other out there.
Now, is that supposed to be Orcus, or is that like just a Baylor?
No, it is Orcus, but the painting is this is from one of the uh, digital issues of Dragon.
Okay.
Okay.
Because again, this was during the period where they just stopped producing things. There was a
Right.
like a 2 or 3 year period where it's down to 2 products a year or 3 products a year, and so thankfully they were still doing the online magazines. So this is from an article about Vecna. The guy with the mask on is a young Vecna.
Right.
But
But
so
yeah, this, as I
He'd
recall,
already lost an eye.
this was kind of the beginning of the super buff Orcus representations, as
right.
opposed to Orcus looking more like a sumo wrestler.
This was fun to do.
Hmm. My God, I never noticed the little goblins at the bottom.
Yeah, yeah.
This looks like the place where Charlie and his grandpa drank the fizzy soda and floated up to the fans in the ceiling.
Oh no, stop.
Just start belching. That's how you defeat these goblins. You belch at them. Uh, yeah,
Question is,
this is
who did
another
you
one. This is
interview for
from
that
an
one?
online
Mhm.
uh, uh, dungeon magazine.
Okay. So who did you interview for the previous one?
Hmm?
The question from the floor. Who did you interview for the previous one?
Who did I interview? Who did I don't remember. I could pull
Yeah,
it up, but I don't.
I'm just curious. I'm curious
Who
as
did I
well. Okay, never
interview?
mind.
Let's see. I can pull it up here. And that was Halls of Undermountain, and I interviewed Colin McComb.
Ah, Colin.
And then the Owlbear Rally.
Was that a Steve Townsend adventure?
Yes, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Steve
I'm trying to
Townsend.
remember what because I think I might have been in charge of Dungeon Magazine at that time.
I think you ordered it, and I was there when it came in.
Okay, all right. Yeah, because I vaguely recall writing this art order.
Nice beholder.
Yeah, there's a bunch now. Now we get into the era where the covers are very, very dark.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And again, what you're picking out from that background is really impressive as
Yeah.
well.
Yes.
I pull it up and I stare at it a lot.
And look, Jeff, that dwarf is wielding your ban hammer.
Yeah.
Exactly. I wish I had that band hammer. Someone brought it to after hours drinks,
Yeah.
and that's when we got the photo. So
This is another. This is a product that was digital only. It's the Elemental Evil Player's Companion, and it was. And this, I think, this was a year when there was only one product. This was a year that the that playtest version of 5e came out with a big adventure, and that was it.
Yeah. What was it? What was that playtest version called? Was
I
that?
don't remember.
It wasn't D&D 1. What the heck was it
No,
called?
it's the name of whatever the adventure was. It was now we're getting very close to where I've caught up. The last few are still going to be in sketch phase because I'm still working on them.
okay,
Um,
What is? I don't recognize this at all.
this was this came out right before or just as I came on for contract again. This is
Okay.
for
So like
the
2012.
Short Coast Player's Companion.
I got it. Oddly enough, I don't have a copy of that, but
It's a really good piece, and they
it is.
blown it up for a convention backdrop, and it was hanging in one of the break rooms. So I got to see a giant version of this every time I went to a meeting.
D&D Next, David Shepard points out. Yes, D&D Next is what it was called.
Xanathar's?
Xanathar's Guide to Everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Xanathar has been on 3 of the drawings I did.
Yes. Was he in that one with the shaggy beholder?
The one, yeah, the one
FR1.
monster manual is supposed to be Xanathar.
Okay. Oh, the one that's coming up. So yeah.
No, this one. That's Xanathar. According, if you look at the book and they say what's on the cover, that's the Xanathar.
So obviously, beholders evolve during their lifespans as well.
And I think this is the last one I finished because I'm working on this one now.
I don't know that one.
It's Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica. This is the first book where they successfully brought
a magic world into the D.
Yeah. Say, is that the Queen of the Borg? Who is that?
The Princess of the Borg.
Yeah.
And then Secrets of Saltwater, of Salt Marsh.
Right.
I like that was a Kuatoa coming up out of him. He's got a great expression on his face.
Sorry, Charlie.
And another magic adaptation. This is Odysseys of Theros. Odyssey of Theros.
Mm-hmm. The Greek mythos one.
I noticed as I was thinking about this that in the background there's a giant creature, like spectral creature in the background that I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to successfully capture. I may just keep it with the Hydra.
Is that guy riding it, or is he just standing on its
He's
back?
standing on its back.
Okay.
And then another magic
Mm-hmm.
one. This is tricks.
Like the owl guy.
Yeah, everyone likes the owl guy. Me too.
That's a cozy. That's a nice,
Yeah,
nice,
yeah.
not fighting for your life cover.
Got Morgan Kanan's Guide to Monsters of the Multiverse.
Multiple of the monsters with
Yeah.
Astral Dreadnought
Yeah,
from Manual of the Plains. Like Kirin.
and the almost complete Book of Dragons, practically complete Book of Dragons.
That
Another
would be a good title for a product.
Yeah.
The practically complete
yeah.
guide to dragons.
We got the new DMG.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that Venger?
It is Avenger.
Yep.
Oh my god, yeah. It's
One
Venger
horn.
and Warduke and yeah.
Yep.
I can never remember her name. She's another character like that. Um, that came out of the same
What,
group.
from the LJN
Yeah.
figures? Because that's Warduke and Vecna, too.
And then finally,
Dum-bum-bum. Obviously, Xanathar's been doing acid.
this is the one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure this is specifically called out as Xanathar, but
Mhm.
sure, why not?
They, like he's trying to lick them to death or
Yeah,
something.
it's a ridiculous cover.
But what I notice a lot about the ones that you're still in sketchwork is that like basically, like I said, the final pieces had a lot going on them.
Yeah,
Basically a lot of much of which basically gets faded into shadows and the like in the way they republish it. And I think you've picked some really good pieces of those out to highlight. So
no, thank you.
The beholder needs a
Skyla was
word balloon. The beholder needs a word balloon saying, "Do you like seafood?"
seafood.
I see food, I eat it. Blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, so that was
That's
my
it for
end
the
of it.
game.
And
Yeah.
I got to talk to so many people in this
Hmm.
thing, and I mean, it's certainly we had conversations about the people that I didn't have on because they I made sure that I had people who played the game because I wanted the interviews to be about that, just not just about working on it, but how gaming came into your life and
True.
it, and so there are other people, and some of whom I talked to about being in it, and I haven't had them on yet. But now that I've finished this run of these 50, I'm gonna broaden up I'm gonna relax the strictures on the content, and so I'll be able to, like Dawn Murin, who was
Hmm.
definitely interested, art director, the last of the TSR people to be at
Right.
Wizards.
Wizards.
But she's not a player. She's never has been much of a player. So I decided, despite the fact that I'd inquired and she said she was interested, not to prioritize her for this series. But I would love to get a conversation with Dawn.
I think that'd be really good
Oh
because
yeah,
it basically behind the scenes of the art approach. One
Yeah,
thing
right.
I do like about what you've done over the past year is bring a lot of people whose stories haven't come forward yet. And basically, especially from the
Yeah,
later times after Steve and I, sort of faded to the background. And I think that's really important for the story of, D&D and D and how it's evolved over
right.
time.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got people like Anne Brown and
Yeah.
Yep.
Karen, that that
Hmm.
had great stories to tell, right? But
Editors,
and
editors
don't
are
get to
are
tell
the
them all.
unsung
The
heroes.
editors are
So
always nervous about coming on.
yeah.
I had Ray Valise on very recently, and he really
Hmm.
was. He's like, I have nothing to say. I said, don't, Ray, you do. Trust me, you'll be fine.
And
And
it worked
what,
out.
Yeah.
like so many other people, we got to an hour and a half, which we're approaching already,
Hmm.
and hadn't gotten to. He said, I didn't get through half of. I thought we just touch on these things and we'd be done. I'm like, that's not how it works, Ray.
So the question is, where
Yeah,
do
I
you
mean,
go
you can
from
talk
here?
about
You
what?
just have we need to talk about what.
Where you talk about finishing
I was
thoughts.
just gonna. All I was
Not
saying
just
was
a
with
segue.
Ray, he could just talk about action figure theater for an hour and a half.
And you know what? The funny thing is, he was like, "No one cares about that." So, Ray, you don't understand. Everyone cares about that.
Uh, Zeb
Yeah.
Cook and his kaiju um, nativity scenes. He would collect. Remember, he would collect the plastic models of all the kaiju, all of the Godzilla
Yep.
monsters, and he'd make little hats for them. So you'd have the three wise lizards, and you have the little baby Godzilla in the creche. But
So
the segue was
one of the
go ahead.
traditions at TSR, whenever there was a list of anything with names, particularly what should a baby be named,
Hmm.
Godzilla Pinball was always one of them.
That was my suggestion, Pinball
Uh,
Godzilla, but only if it's a girl.
all right. I didn't know where that came from. I just knew that it was a
I
tradition.
did that. Yeah.
There was one of those lists when Joe Lucas, if you remember Joe Lucas, was he and his wife were expecting a baby, and the standard thing went up of
Hmm.
what should Joe and I think Eileen was his wife's name. It was like, what should they name the baby? And I was talking to Joe about something as we walked past the list, and Joe stopped and he's reading the names. And he saw one of them was Mucus Lucas. Joe started laughing. He said, "That's what kids called me when I was in grade school."
Oh,
It's a family name.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's got a heritage.
tradition.
Oh.
Oh man. Um, yeah. So to answer your question, Jeff, what am I going to do going
Where do
forward?
we go from here? This is the segue. Yeah.
Where do we go from? Where do we go from here?
From here.
Yeah. There's a Buffy reference right there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I'm going to uh, keep doing interviews. I'm lining up people for March,
Hmm.
and among the things, so I'm going to start going outside of necessarily TSR and Wizards, and
Hmm.
um, one of the things I thought about was going forward if I needed to change the name of the show, right? Because 50 years in the dungeon, um, clearly it came. I thought of that because it tied into the 50th anniversary and the fact that I wanted to
Mhm.
do the 50 drawings, one from each year. Um, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, it's actually just kind of a good generic title too, and it represents my 50 years almost. I'm approaching 50 years of gaming, so
Right.
Mhm.
I'm just gonna keep the title.
Well, I suggested Stan in
Mhm.
the dungeon. So
What
I
you
suggested Stan in the dungeon
stand
instead of Stan in the dungeon.
stand
In the
stand
place
in the
where you
place
are.
where he
Yeah.
works?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think 50 years in the dungeon. You're right. I think it's a catchy title. There's
Yeah.
no reason to abandon. You could change it to 51 years in the dungeon if you want to be truly pedantic about it. I
Yeah,
guess.
but
50 plus years.
I
Then you
don't.
can use the
Yeah.
logo all the way
Yeah.
I've done up a nice logo now, and I want to keep using it.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a good name.
Um,
The question I think is from this point going forward, how do you choose your your illo subject anymore? Because you don't
Mhm.
really have you don't have the chronology to follow
right,
at this point.
right, and
Do you want
I
to
haven't
keep yourself
solved
to
that.
fantasy?
Hmm.
Do you want to keep yourself to fantasy?
Yeah, I mean, as someone pointed out, this is the 50th anniversary of Call of Cthulhu
Hmm.
this year, which I'm also.
Actually, I think it's the 50th anniversary of Chaosium. Call of Cthulhu
Yeah,
didn't come out until like 1979 or
80.
80 or something like that.
I was gonna say 82 or so because I was
Yeah, it might. Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I think I
well,
was already
maybe
at
maybe
TSR
79.
when
Yeah,
Call of Cthulhu came out, so it had to
yeah.
be like 81 or
Wasn't in my college years, so therefore, yeah, I
82.
put it as post 80.
Yeah.
all right.
But
Well,
yeah, I mean,
then
you
that's
easily could expand to even other companies, right? You could
yeah,
do pick up
Hmm.
some cool Judges Guild stuff or Mayfair or Chaosium,
The
any of the
more modern groups
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. No
Cobalt,
reason to limit yourself to the
um,
dim.
I can also go back and start doing
Green
more of
Ronin,
those interior pieces from the early classic D&D.
Hmm.
So
and Early Dragon had a lot of great art as
yeah,
well.
yeah,
And that was, yes, also an area that, because we had such a plethora of material from
Hmm.
the books, from the games. We had books, we had uh, magazines, we had comic book lines.
yeah,
Yeah,
Those were, all, and still have had them show up since then. So,
yeah. No,
we had Spellfire cards.
oh yeah,
oh yeah, I could do a drawing of some of those photo cards. That would be
photo
Yeah,
cards that you had.
yeah.
yeah. I mean,
Uh,
we certainly talked about that before. There are years, particularly in the '80s and into the '90s, where there were 80 to 100 products
hmm.
plus 12, well, 24 magazines at
Hmm.
Hmm.
least. That's it. Well, no. So 12 for Dragon, and Dungeon was yeah, it got to be monthly, didn't it? It was bi-monthly for a long
Hmm.
Yeah,
time.
Yeah,
originally.
it is.
And four novels a month. So there's
Yes.
another, 48 with like 200 plus possible covers a year.
Right. I mean, actually, I mean, doing a year of just the magazines, I think, would be
Yeah.
an interesting approach. Although they don't have quite the nostalgic appeal to people as the hardcovers and the bigger adventures would
Well, I
have.
mean,
Right.
some of them do, like the Denny Bouvet,
Chess
the
pieces.
crossing,
But, yep, yep. The
crossing.
dragon
Yeah,
attacking the bridge and that kind of thing. Yeah, those were iconic.
I think that certainly if I was gonna, I don't know that I could pull 50 of them out, but there's a good series of those to be done.
And we had the board games as well.
Board
We
games,
had
Hmm.
Divine Right.
Uh,
I love the
and
cover
there's
for that.
all the. I mean, there's other even like Gamma World,
right?
uh,
Yeah, it
Right.
opens up all
Star
those others.
Frontiers.
Heck,
Yep.
you could do 6 months on Gamma World covers by themselves. We've just done so many editions over the years. So.
Yeah, of only the game rules.
Um, one of the people I'm talking to that I'm going to have on pretty soon is Rob Schwab.
Hmm.
Um, and we're going to do a piece of art from one of his games, one of the games he's
Sure.
published. Um,
Shadow of the Demon Lord, Shadow of the
Shadow of the Demon
Weird
Lord.
Wizard.
Yep.
The
It's
Weird Wizard.
undecided
I've
exactly
got
which
a copy
one,
of the.
but
I got a copy of Weird Wizard, and I was really impressed with, comparing the two as
yeah,
far as how his design and the world evolved. And it's pretty. It's a
yeah,
different setting,
Mhm.
same general world, but you can see how his mechanics basically got very refined as he went forward.
yeah.
So,
So yeah. So I'm going to reach out to people who were not necessarily.
up
Although
the Bobby.
Rob did work at
Yes.
Wizards for a
Hmm.
while and
Mhm.
uh, on a bunch of stuff, but I'm reaching out to some other people who didn't. uh, have that direct connection. Um, and I'm also thinking about putting together. I've talked about this on occasion, but putting together panels, like maybe having 3 or 4 guests on that are themed, like either
Hmm.
editors to talk about, you know, editing things. Is there a few editors who I couldn't convince, and I'm hoping maybe if I pull them in groups that they might feel more comfortable.
Yeah.
Or creative teams like I've talked about doing the Planescape team or
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
Birthright team. Uh, I know. I mean, I've had you on, Jeff. I had Tracy on. Talked to Margaret. Was not interested in doing this style of interview again because she wasn't a huge player,
Hmm.
and she doesn't like to do. She's not as she's not as fond of seeing herself talk as we are. But I don't know if I could put together you and Tracy. Maybe we could convince Margaret to come on for a group
Hmm.
discussion.
A realms
Yeah. I mean, you
panel.
had
Bring in
Harold,
Ed and
didn't
Panel,
you?
yeah, get you and Ed and a few people. So
Yeah.
those would be fun. And in those kind of things, I don't think I'd be drawing. Right? It's got had
Mhm.
that many people on. It's probably just going to be a conversation like
Mhm.
this. So
Mhm.
I think that's a shift that I'm looking at is the show doesn't necessarily have to have a drawing every week, though.
Though I do like the drawing. I do
I
like
do. Yeah,
the your
I'm
work.
not getting
Mhm.
So
rid of it.
I think you do
Trust
it
me.
real well. So
I start by saying your cartoonist pal Stan for a
mhm.
reason.
Did you ever get Rodney Thompson in the
Rodney
last year?
Thompson was on, yes.
Okay.
I just, I can pull up here. I'll tell you who my guests were.
Mhm.
You know what? I can do it this way too. We were looking at this earlier. We're about to go well over my hour and a half that I usually hold it to, but that's all right.
Mhm.
This is special issue, special episode. So
Alpine
here
would
we
be
go. These
interesting, by
these
the way.
are these are the shows in the series, and this is the first one that was us. There we are. Look how cute we are. A year ago,
Yes, we'll be young.
no front
Oh,
face.
you look so young.
And then the next week, oh look, it was you guys again. And so yeah, so each one I've got photos of who it is and a picture of the thing I'm going to be drawing. I don't know. I hope that people notice that, but that's how I built these each week. And then we had Steve Sullivan on.
Right?
Look at that Greyhawk cover. That
Yeah.
sad, sad beholder.
That, that, yeah, that beach ball beholder up there.
It looks like what's it? The angry orange? Is that the meme? And then Ed Stark.
Right?
Um, and Bill Slavicsek. And Jim Ward.
Jim.
Jim. This was his.
Hmm.
Someone asked in a post somewhere else. This was not his last interview. He did another show about 2 weeks later. It was a a group show that he was part of. But I think this was his last solo interview. Um, yeah, I'm so glad. You know what? On the one hand, it comes up and I feel like, ooh, people say, hey, feather in your cap, you got the last interview with Jim Ward, and I think, yeah, that's fine and all, but I'm so glad, if nothing else, that this show gave me an excuse to spend an hour and a half talking to him, which I never would have done.
Mhm.
Like we'd have said, oh,
Mhm.
I'll see it, whatever, show down the
Right.
line. But it gave me a reason for all of these people to spend time talking to them, and
Hmm.
that's one of my big takeaways from this whole project. Skip Williams and Diesel. Oh, yeah, Diesel, and then this was the week that Ed Greenwood was supposed to be on, and
Right.
had such bad. Um,
Reception.
well, no, he just couldn't log in. Just such bad
Yeah.
tech problems
Mhm.
that Rich and Dale bailed me out last minute. They both said yes, so I said I'll have you both on. And you know what? I've been meaning to have them each back individually, and I haven't. So I'm a bad guy.
That's on the to-do
There we go.
list.
There's that'll happen. Steve Sullivan was back again because we were talking about the comic.
Yeah.
Tracy, that Grubb guy.
Yep.
Todd. We talked about his Christmas book, his 12 Days of Christmas.
He has an art book out now that's just absolutely fantastic as well.
He's not surprising.
Yeah.
Got Zeb on. There we go. So look at the flesh tone on that,
Mm-hmm.
Steve.
Right, but where did you get that image?
That's my cover.
But I mean, where did the actual digital image come from? Because that looks a lot more washed out than what I recall the original painting being.
Well, hopefully you've still got it on your shelves somewhere. I think
I don't, unfortunately. I went looking for it a couple of months ago and I could not find it anywhere.
I bet
So.
John does. When we go over.
Probably.
Oh yeah, just about guarantee it.
John
Or
Wallace.
sometime next time I'm in Chicago, I'll pull a copy off of Bill Meinhardt's shelf and take a look at it.
And then there. Next one, I have Jim Louder.
I love that beholder.
Right. I mean, just look how vibrant the colors are there in that Parkinson painting, right? I mean, he always made colors that really were saturated. Mm-hmm. So.
You can just see the giant eagle behind that 1988.
Yeah. Looks like a tower up there.
Yeah. I was going to say, didn't Jim write that book? But yeah, there's his name right there.
Mm-hmm.
Matt Forbeck. Karen.
See, you can see the Man of War disappears.
I think I may have been building my whole career towards having this show because Karen is one of 3 or 4 people whose reply was, "I never say yes to any of these, but for you, Stan, okay."
See, that's your superpower.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such a great conversation. If you haven't watched it yet, go back and watch the Karen Conlon.
It's worth watching.
Oh no, I definitely tuned in for that one. So.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff D.
That's one I've got to go back and watch. I missed the Jeff episode. So.
David Wise.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. That was the headshot he sent me.
He was doing regional theater.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. I think that headshot wasn't that from he was in a music video or something where he played the rotten old king. Mm-hmm. That was a very amusing video.
Lester Smith. Again, I mean, because he never comes to conventions anymore. I mean, we exchange emails, but I never talk to Lester. This is such a great opportunity just to hang out for an hour or so and chat.
Yeah. He made it to GaryCon last year.
Yes, he did.
I had a nice talk with Lester there at GaryCon, but I don't know whether he's going back again this year.
Doug Niles. Scott Douglas.
Yes, obviously Fred.
Mm-hmm.
I had forgotten. I mean, I drew it, and I had forgotten the goofy look on that halfling's face. And brown, and there, I get you get a good shot of what Janelle did with that water monster.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's crazy. So good. Tim Beach, Thomas Reed. I don't remember whether he sent
Ah,
me that photo or he didn't send me any photos, so I grabbed what I could, and it was that one. Because these days he's got that wild man beard going on.
Yeah. Yeah, that's been his Facebook photo for a long time. The tape on his face.
Harold Johnson.
Whoa.
You know what? Harold's another one that it took a lot of time to get because he's so busy, and he was actually uh, ill that last year, and
Hmm.
probably still is. Um, but I couldn't get him to answer email, and I was afraid I was just never going to get him. So very glad when that panned out. He's who I had lunch with at the next door next door pub.
Yep,
Yeah.
next door pub.
Sue Wineline, Julia Martin, Ed and Bill together. This is the halftime show,
Yep.
and I did Ask Me Anything. Right back into Phil Athens and J.D. Weicker, Charles Ryan, Peter Atkinson. Always fun to talk to.
Hmm. That was a good episode.
Sean Reynolds. There. Do you remember that? That's the that one you didn't remember at all.
Right.
You know what? Seeing that version of it,
Hmm.
yeah, I have seen that. Uh,
And it's much darker. It's
yeah,
got that. A lot
Yeah.
of more of the as we're getting this period, we're going to see a lot of darker images as well. You mentioned that before.
yeah, and he doesn't. That orc is a awful lot nastier looking than your orcs, Stan. you you can't quite help but make them look a little bit nicer.
Little more cartoony. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, that's a good word for it.
that's a fair cop. Andy Collins, Bruce Cordell, Monty Cook. Look how cool Wolfgang looks. Wolfgang Bauer,
Yes.
Rodney
That's another
Thompson.
one I missed. I got to go back and watch that one.
What, Wolfgang or Rodney or both?
Wolfgang. I don't. I think I must have seen the Rodney one, but I ran into Rodney
Uh,
again at Gamehole Con last
yeah,
year.
yeah.
Rodney and I.
Ask Me Anything. I don't remember why that Ask Me Anything came up. There was something that happened where a guest couldn't make it. I don't remember
Yeah.
who it was. It was scheduled that just couldn't make it. Oh, I remember what it was. That this was the week of the election, and
Okay.
my scheduled guest was and it was not available. And I didn't think that it was a good time to start reaching out and asking someone the last minute. You want to come in and have a good time? No, none of us were in a good time that week, so I just didn't ask me anything, which worked out pretty well. Gwen Kestrel, another editor who wasn't sure that that she was going to be a good guest and was a fantastic guest. Colin McComb.
Looks like Anton LaVey now.
I'm sure that would make him happy to hear you say that. Finally got Ed Greenwood on. That's how long it took us to get the tech figured out.
Oh.
Stupid Canada.
Eric Mona. Mike Selinker. This is a pretty interesting array of people I've had. I don't really think
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like Merles.
Well, it's this making D&D has attracted a lot of interesting people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That was one of the things about early TSR. It's like nobody at TSR had a background in making games,
No.
right? There were,
you couldn't study for it. Yeah.
There were marine biologists and puppeteers, all kinds
Civil
of
engineers.
Civil engineers.
Tracy ran a movie theater for a while. It just like we came from all over the place.
Jeff Quick.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's so hard for people to understand, for young up and comers to understand how there was nothing like this for our background. There wasn't a DigiPen or any other
That's right.
college that had programs or even classes in game design.
Your experience was you designed games. I mean, there was a period where I got my start, basically doing tournament adventures. And on the strength of those, later on, we were going to raiding from West End and GDW and other, other smaller game companies where people had, prove their chops.
Yeah. My resume coming to TSR was I'd been writing for the Space Gamer. So
yeah. Stephen Radney McFarlane and Frankenstein's Bride.
Yeah, because we see a lot more shadows, a lot more shade.
Oh,
you have a much cleaner line.
Covers, I think these show how much darker the covers have gotten.
Yeah.
Ray Winninger.
Yep. Yeah, Ray was a really interesting guest.
Jim Butler. They're on the very left. Oh, I guess you can't see it because of the way it's cut off there.
Yeah.
On the screen, but what I'm looking at, you can just see the face of the spectral thing in the background.
Yeah, it just looks like swirling colors to what I'm seeing.
Strixhaven.
Yeah, like you said, looks very cozy. It's cozy D&D.
Chris Perkins.
That's one I haven't watched yet.
Chris, the interesting thing is Chris is one of the first people that agreed to be on because I had lunch with him early in the new year last year, and I was mentioning this idea for this show even before we did our episode 1. That I was just kind of bouncing the idea off him, and he's like, "That sounds great. I'll be on." Just managed to fit it in.
Skated in at the end.
Jefferson Dunlap. there's a person who's been involved with D&D. As he pointed out, he was the pre-flight guy for every D&D product that's come out since the buyout,
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and no one knows who he is. It's kind of fun to bring him in.
Pre-flight.
Pre-flight,
Define
yeah.
for
Yeah.
those. No, define it for the people at home.
It's the
Pre-press.
yes, it's getting the files ready to send to the printer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You
He
know,
also is the archivist for D&D. So.
yeah. Bringing up Jefferson makes me think you should consider getting like Kurt Gould on as a guest. Kurt was the purchaser, but but he was also, he's a huge D&D nerd going all the way back to the beginning, and he was the guy who like processed all of the stuff that we shipped out to Wizards of the Coast from uh, TSR. So like all the TSR library stuff, the legal
Yeah.
archives, all of that. Kurt was the guy who like went through all of that stuff and sorted it into what was important, what wasn't. Um, and yeah, he would have tons of stories from all
He might know where some extra stuff is buried.
that.
Ray Valise. And there's Venger. There he is, right on the
Yep,
cover.
our
Mm-hmm.
old buddy.
And then last week with Jeremy. Huh. And of course, these guys are back again.
And we come back. We come
Yeah,
full circle.
yeah.
If you want to do a theme interview, I think John Ratliff always mentioned they had the New Fish, where they had about 5 employees that all started within about the same week. And it
Yeah.
was Colin and maybe Rich Baker. I don't know if Miranda was in that bunch. Miranda's would be a good person to talk to because she's been not only
Mhm.
TSR but also Steve Jackson games.
Yeah. No. And West End. Miranda's
Yeah,
Yeah.
West
Miranda
End.
is
Yeah.
on my
Mhm.
list. I've still
I don't
got the
know.
list of people that
Okay.
didn't make it. Miranda's on there. Bill Connors is on there. Didn't get to do
Yeah.
him. I want to reach out to um, uh, Andrea and Troy. Andrea Hayday and
That'd
Troy
be good.
Deming.
Mhm.
Someone suggested an Al Khadim, and she would be a
Yeah.
panel type thing, and she'd be perfect
Yep.
for that because she was so responsible for a lot of the coolness that was in that game.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're now approaching 2 hours, so maybe, well,
It may be time.
maybe it may be time. Though,
So
as
you do know you're going to go ahead with this.
yes,
You're
yes.
going to broaden the spectrum a little. You're going to get a lot more people, people in. Are
Next
you
week.
going to
Mhm.
be doing stuff they worked on, or stuff that was adjacent to
Well, I
them,
mean,
or their
right
favorite
now,
stuff?
so the first few I've got set up, I'm going to do stuff they worked on as I try and figure out what my plan is. That might be the plan, is to just tie it to the guests, but
Hmm.
I have a feeling I'll probably want to do some more stuff. You
Yeah,
know, it,
there are good pieces where you can't, where the artist isn't with us anymore. For
yeah.
example.
Mhm.
So I art wise, I don't know what the theme is going to be for what I do going into year two. Um, I may go back to more of those interior pieces from the first
Hmm.
edition, which was my original thought before doing these covers. Before the anniversary theme came around, I was just going to do a show like this where I drew my versions of uh, stuff from the first edition black and white uh, art.
Redo Men
Because
in
there's a
Magic.
whole
Yeah.
lot of pieces that would be fun to redraw in my style.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Um, and maybe I'll just mix it up and do a whole bunch of different things and not create a formula and go from there.
Okay.
Um, but next week I've got a very surprise interview. I'm not going to say.
Okay.
Mhm.
We do have a query about people who did the art for the D&D comics. I'm still in contact with Rags Morales, who was my artist on the Forgotten Realms
Right.
book, and I don't know if he'd be interested or not. But
Yeah, you know what? Find out. And maybe I could have you back on again with
oh
Rags.
God, haven't I bogarted this enough?
But you know what?
But if you
One of the
did
things
comics,
is,
we probably could get Elliot too. Elliot Magan, who's
yeah.
one of our editors. Hmm.
All right, that would be fun. Yeah, so that would be a nice little group
Hmm.
interview.
If you decide
Tell
to
you
do a
what,
group
Jeff,
thing.
I'm going to give you the assignment of reaching out.
No.
Action
Please,
item
at
number
least,
one.
yeah,
Thank you.
Jeff
find
Grubb.
I'll see
if
what I
they're
can do.
interested. I certainly will do the setup for the show, but
Okay.
I don't have connections with either of them, and I don't think that reaching out cold is going to draw as much chance of them saying
Attention.
yes as if you
Hmm.
ask them.
Okay. Okay. But I will say you should do another group first to see, get the
Yeah,
format down
yeah.
before I
Larry
make
Elmore. Larry's.
tough.
He said, Jeff, you came back from uh, uh, GaryCon last year, saying that you talked to
Yep.
Larry, and he'd
Hmm.
said, yeah, but he never replied to any of the emails I sent him. So,
Okay. He may be at GaryCon this weekend. It's in a couple weeks. I will put the query in front of him,
yeah,
or better yet, I'll tell Betty.
yeah.
So,
Yes. Yeah.
um, and it may be that
but
he just gets
he's
too
gone
much
he's gone into that
email.
retirement he's gone into retirement, which means he's drawing what he wants to draw.
Right.
So,
Oh, come on. Larry always drew what he wanted to draw.
ooh.
Any last words you guys want to have before I pull you off screen and do an outro?
Just thanks for inviting us back.
Oh, I was going
And
to say
thanks for
thank you to
tuning
you for
in.
coming back.
Yeah.
I'm sure that I will have you back again, and I'll see you for gaming on Saturday and lunch on Wednesday. But
Okay,
hold
doke.
on, I'll do an outro and then we'll say goodnight. All right, well, there we go. An extra long episode of 50 Years in the Dungeon. Another fun conversation with Steve Winter and Jeff Grubb, reviewing everything we've done in the past year plus. This first season, I guess I'll call it. It's more than the first year. The first focus for this show has now been successfully brought in. I'm working on completing. You saw a bunch of the drawings are not yet complete. I will continue to post them initially to our free newsletter, 50yearsinthedungeon.substack.com, as they're completed. Eventually, I'll show them publicly also, but if you want to see them first, if you want to know what's going on, that's the place to be. And, as I say, the show is going to continue. I'll be back next week. There'll be another interview, as I say, with a surprise guest. And got another couple of guests who've agreed already, and I'm reaching out. As Jeff and Steve and I talked about, I'm going to be shifting the format a little. Sometimes there will be drawings going on, sometimes not. I'm almost certainly going to have more panel groups of people who worked on projects together or have related disciplines. I don't know, just different things that'll make interesting conversations. We've had 50 years of gaming, of D&D and gaming, tabletop role-playing gaming, and we're going forward. One of the questions I asked every guest this year was what they saw in the future. Um, I don't have a great answer for that myself right here, but I do see that there is a lot to continue talking about, and there's a lot for this show to explore. Many more interesting people to have conversations with, many more classic pieces of gaming art for me to do cartoon homages to, and hopefully a lot more reasons for you guys to keep coming back every week to join us and enjoy the show. And I hope that you will. Till then, it would do me a really big favor if you gave this a thumbs up, give it a thumbs up or a heart or whatever it is on the platform you're watching it on. This is going to help to show this show to other people, to get more people to come in and watch it. We've got an archive of all of those previous episodes we've been reviewing. Everything I showed there, you can watch those episodes if you go to my YouTube channel. There's an archive for 50 Years in the Dungeon. And yeah, go back and have a look. There's a lot of really fun conversations, a lot of little stories and snippets that I think are well worth your time. So let's say, yeah, like, thumbs up. Also, if you're watching this on replay, it would be super great if you could just leave a quick comment. Tell me how you found it here. If you have a suggestion for someone else you think would be good to bring on, or what I can do with the show, I'm totally open to that. Please let me know what you're thinking. And till then, till next time I'm back, which will be next week, thank you for coming. Thank you for joining me for a year. Thank you, everyone who's been a guest. And till then, take care, and I'll see you. Bye.